Welcome back to the Katie Halper Show. We're here every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on FwdRad.io 99.5 FM with, as usual, Reggie Johnson and Gabe Pacheco. And now we are tuning back in to talk to two new guests we have live in studio. This is really exciting. It's a live, all girls, all live show tonight. That's exciting. Girls. Anna Day is a journalist whose work can be found in Daily Beast, the New York Times, among other places. And she's written from Syria and Palestine and Israel. And Caroline Motoresi-Tarani, who is a host at HuffPost Live and who writes for the Financial Times and The Independent. As in the British one, not the New York City Independent, which we love, of course, but they're slightly different. I think their budgets are a little bit different. So, ladies, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
I wanted you both to talk about your recent investigations and writings and interviews and the crisis that's happening in Syria. And people are talking about refugees. People are talking about migrants. What's the difference? What should be done? Obviously, the United States is being criticized for not planning to admit enough people from Syria. Anna, we'll start with you. Tell us about what you found during your time there, and also now that you've been back, have you encountered a lot of opposition to supporting people from that part of the world, and what do you think it's due to?
You know what's been exciting is I've found, particularly in the recent month when the media has really latched on to these images of the refugee crisis in Europe, that there's been an outpouring of people power and people support for bringing in more refugees in the United States. I think it's really come into our consciousness that the U.S. isn't doing enough finally. So I've seen an outpouring of support from people all over the country who are now questioning, well, of course we can do more. So I'm excited about that, but I think it's the U.S. government and European governments that need to get out of the way. So there are people willing to host refugees. Let's get creative on that.
Interesting. So you're saying it's not even about the government doing something officially. If the government just stepped out of the way, civilians, people power, they would just be able to host people?
In Germany, there's an exciting new initiative that a friend of mine just reported on for IB Times. And the initiative is, it's like a Airbnb Tinder for refugees. And it's citizens who want to let Syrians live in their homes. I mean, if we can speed up the migration process to the United States and approving these refugees to come over, there's plenty of people in the U.S. who would like to host these kind of refugees as well.
So like a small government approach to this, like sort of a very libertarian way of just like outsourcing this to the...
Rand Paulian, you wrote down on your note card, right?
Yeah, I did.
Listen, all I'm saying with this is I wouldn't usually take that approach. I wish the U.S. was doing far more in the region and had shown some leadership on this. It's just they have monumentally screwed up in all of their engagement with Syria. So that at this point, if they're going to continue to be a barrier to people who want to do the right thing, then get out of the way.
Right. Move, U.S., get out the way. Get out the way. Come on, Gabe, sing it. So, but, okay, so you're saying there's the collective will. There's more collective will than we're acknowledging.
I don't know. Well, okay. So the counter to that, I suppose, is that absolutely there's that collective will. We interviewed somebody on HuffPost Live last week who's in Germany and is doing just that. Opening up his house, and other people are opening up their houses as well to refugees, which I think is wonderful. It's an excellent thing, and it really does show that despite the serious lack of humanity that we've been seeing over the last really few months, that there are sort of these beacons of light of humanity that are still around, which is extremely heartening. However, there is pushback, and there are pushback in certain countries that are really on the gateways to where these refugees are going, which is end goal has been Germany for obvious reasons. Angela Merkel has really stepped up, which has been really wonderful to see. She said, look, we're going to accept not only our share of a quota, but more than our share of a quota.
Why is that, by the way?
Well, I think that she's a very smart woman. I think that she actually, with her finance background, knows that rather than seeing refugees as a drain on society, that you have to be smart and forward-thinking. They're a resource. Refugees are an absolute resource. There was a fantastic piece in the New York Times yesterday, and forgive me, I forget the writer's name, but he was talking about the economics of immigration and the refugee crisis. I should stress they're two different things, and that's something probably we'll chat about in a bit, but, this idea of immigration kind of being conflated with the refugee crisis. But David Cameron, as an example, in the UK, had stressed when he came into power that he was going going to cut on net immigration, that we're going to be closing our borders, this isn't a free-for-all sponges state, blah, 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 the same kind of tired, hackneyed narrative we've heard. However, actually, in the long run, 2050, you're going to see a percentage decrease in wages at about 3.3% if you do that, because we know that migrants and refugees and immigrants, quite frankly, actually are a boost to an economy long run. They are a boost too. And that's why you've got countries like Serbia who are saying, we actually want to welcome refugees. Please come to our country, because we've had such a brain drain after the Balkan crisis that, we need bodies, we need smart people. And of course, that really gets to a point, and Anna, I think, raises this always excellently, which is, who are these refugees at the end of the day? They are not leeches on society. They're doctors, engineers. They are middle-class people. They are people like you and me. And they just want to have a chance.
Yeah, they're the ones with the drive and the gumption to get out, and so they are going to be creating more industry and more business opportunities in the country. So if we just let government get out of the way.
Gabe said that. It's Gabe, I know. Gabe, I was like, what is happening to Gabe?
This is literally the first time this has happened to me on this show. I don't know what
happens. Like you're like being, the libertarian spirit has entered you. I don't know if you're being devil's advocate or if you're actually converting right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I'm just...
I was going to say, who do you have here, Katie? I wouldn't expect it.
I know.
Just joking.
I got a Paul. No. He's a long-lost Paul.
No, I just really, we talk about immigration issues in the United States often, and it's the conservatives and the Republicans that talk more about how the immigration is an issue, and they're somehow a challenge to the fabric of the United States, sort of our cultural identity and our economic policies. And here I'm hearing that these immigrants who are moving to the Balkans and then also to Germany are in fact going to be a boon to the economies there. So it's refreshing to hear.
Well, even here, like, people pay into Social Security without undocumented workers pay into Social Security and don't get the benefits from it. So there's this myth that they're leeches, as you say, as you call them. No, just kidding. As you called out people for calling them. But what's interesting is that even, Martin O'Malley, who's wants to get the Democratic nomination, right, is pushing.
Is he still in there? Is he still in
I think so. Yes, and HuffPost Live has to have him on.
He's like one of those Game of Thrones characters that's definitely not going to be the king. But
he's lovable. But we love him. But maybe he moves the kingdom to the what instead of to the left, to the magical. I don't know. I don't watch the show, so I can't make the terrible joke. But what's interesting is that you have someone like Lindsey Graham saying we have to let people in. If not, we have to take down the Statue of Liberty. Maybe you and Lindsey Graham switched. Is that what happened? Wow. Gabe Pacheco and Lindsey Graham, I think, had like a transfusion or something.
Like that Dudley Moore Kirk Cameron movie where like they switch identities.
Yeah, which one is that? Isn't that like every 1980s movie ever?
I thought it was John Travolta and Nicolas Cage. Wasn't that one?
Oh, that's Face Off.
Yeah.
And then there's Big. Oh no, he just grows up in that one. But there are lots of Freaky Friday derivatives. What? Parent Trap, yeah. And then there's the Turner and Hooch and Canine. Speaking of twin movies that are the same thing, this is like Cop and his dog. Anyway.
My entire childhood.
Or Look Who's Talking 1, 2, and maybe 3. I'm not sure. Okay.
Look Who's Talking Infinity. But what's interesting, and then even on Reason, which is a libertarian website, Reason.com has an article. This is why America should take more Syrian refugees, and it's basically this Colin Powell, you broke it, you fix it, right? Type of idea, which is that look, we destabilize that area, we help create ISIL, whatever their social media handle is at the moment. They're very good on social media.
Yeah. Great production value.
Terrible
content.
Terrible content. Terrible messaging. I mean, good messaging, terrible message. But we help create them, so we need to help the people flee them. I mean, there is this,
and I mean, it's interesting that that's the argument on Reason. I should point out my husband works at Reason, so I have to push it.
Put all looking at Gabe with those batting your eyelashes.
I know.
She has a libertarian fetish.
I can't help it. It's the inner socialist in me. I'm a self-hating socialist, clearly.
Yeah. It's the forbidden fruit. I have it too.
It is. We've talked about this. This is an aside. Hang on, but to the matter of hand, it's interesting that the libertarians would make that argument about the sort of, you fix it, you've got to to make men's, because I can see them sort of putting forward that economic argument. The economic argument to me is something that's extremely libertarian. The sort of like mea culpa thing, it's fascinating that that's something that they're sort of advocating and putting forward.
Like a radical self-accountability. Like, we're responsible, so let's own up to it.
Yeah, like almost like a very Catholic thing. I can imagine like a very confession thing. I'm so sorry, I ate the cupcake and I'm now going to bake you more cupcakes.
Randian. Ayn Rand is like turning in her non-grave. I don't know what she did with herself, but she doesn't believe
it. Like an urn?
Probably. I don't know.
She's spinning in her urn.
Yeah, she's spinning in her urn.
But, it goes back to what Anna was saying, doesn't it, about the fact that, we can do more. I read something about, the number, just to kind of put it in perspective, the Big House, I don't know if anyone is a college football fan, but the Big House in Michigan holds around 130,000 people. We're not even taking a fraction of that number of refugees in the United States. Just think about that. Next time you hear about the refugee numbers and think, wow, that sounds like, if you've got family around the Thanksgiving table or whatever, they're like, oh, we can't have any more of them refugees.
Right.
Just remind them that, like, by the way, I think that's how all Americans speak.
Right, we do. Especially Jews.
Well, of course. But I think that's what you got to say to them is like, the Big House, that Michigan, like, gorgeous stadium thing, like that's 130,000 people. There's nothing like that is coming into this country, is coming into the United Kingdom. You could probably combine the two, and it's just woeful.
And what about the election, the victory in England that just happened, the socialist victory, if you will? Can you just, in our last few minutes, tell us about that and what effect that's going to have on it? Do you think that's going to have an effect on this?
The interesting thing, so Jeremy, just for those who don't know, so the leader of the opposition used to be Ed Miliband, and he got trounced really in the last elections. It wasn't, he just got beaten by David Cameron, who is the current Prime Minister of the UK. And Jeremy Corbyn's platform really was just one of this sort of weird radical transparency. And I say weird because in politics, transparency in politics is kind of anathema.
Right.
But so he basically won by a landslide and has now got this unique position where every Wednesday we have something called Prime Minister's Questions in the UK, which is where the two leaders of respective parties basically go toe-to-toe with one another. Well, today he did something really radical, which is that he said, I'm going to be reading nothing but questions from people I've crowdsourced, and I'm going to be putting questions to you. Sorry, I just dropped my phone. But I'm going to be putting questions to you from the people themselves, because this whole system that we have in the UK at the moment has just become like a pantomime. And we're now going to put the questions and the concerns of the people to you. And I think one of the interesting things about it was emailed him and said they wanted to ask a question about mental health in the UK.
Wow.
That's a huge
That's
number.
mental.
That's mental, isn't it? On the refugees, I think it's important to stress that he's been pushing this, and he said that David Cameron's response has been wholly inappropriate and inadequate.
Nice. That's mental also. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Come back, Anna Day, Caroline Madarasi Tehrani, and come back, talk to us more about Syria. I want to hear about Iran from you, Caroline, and Syria from you, Anna. And this is the Katie Halper Show. Join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. I'm here with Reggie Johnson and Gabe Pacheco. And you can check us out at WBAI 99.5 FM, WBAI.org, and on iTunes and SoundCloud. See you next week.